right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies might have inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Kiss of the Spider Woman, the new film from Bill Condon, a big musical with all kinds of flashy musical numbers starring J.Lo. And it kind of intercuts between this prison drama. It's a remake of a 1980s film. It was also a musical. Now we've got this new version, and it's actually really good. It's unfortunately dying in theaters, so if it's still playing by you, you should go see it because it's a good movie. But we are going to talk about it. Joining me is Eric Langberg, and we get into a lot of great puzzle pieces for this one. So that's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. And you could also join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, which is a fun little community of film lovers. I keep it closed, so we keep out all the internet riffraff. Only cool people who want to actually talk movies are in there, and it's a great time. Check us out on Facebook, the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group. And with that said, let's talk about Kiss of the Spider Woman. All right, Eric Langberg is here. We're going to talk about Kiss of the Spider Woman. How's it going, Eric?
Hello, happy to be back. How are you?
I am great. I'm excited to talk about this one. It's going to be an interesting one. Very different directions. I feel like we're going to be able to go with some puzzle pieces and just all different kinds of areas. It should be a fun one to get into.
Yeah.
But I want to kick it off. First of all, I have not seen the 80s film. Have you seen that? Are you a fan of that?
I have not either. I really go back and forth sometimes when something like this happens where because I'm interested in like adaptation and remakes.
Sure.
I write a lot about like film as folklore, and so when we remake films or retell the same stories over and over, I think there's something interesting going on there. Like, why are we choosing to tell this story again now?
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll do like a super deep dive, and I'll read the book, I'll read the play, I'll find the musical online, I'll watch the movie. But this time I just kind of stepped back and wanted to watch this one just as it is on its own and see what I thought. So no, I'm not too familiar. I sort of know a couple differences that I've read online since, but no, I'm not familiar
Okay.
directly.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Like I said, I haven't seen it either, and I'm curious too because like it seems like it would be a very forward-thinking, progressive film for the early '80s, and to go in a direction like this movie does, assuming that it takes the same direction as the story progresses, which I have to assume it does. I can't imagine they changed it like that much, but
From what I hear, they did change it quite a bit.
okay,
My understanding is that they both die in the original,
okay,
whereas this one ends on like that moment of like release and hope.
right,
um,
right,
where he gets out of prison. So
yeah,
um,
all
there,
right,
I exchanged some messages with a guy on my review who like left some comments about how he wasn't even interested in seeing it based on the way that I described it, because the original, he says, is very dark and depressing, and to make this one sort of light and upbeat and inspirational is, he said, a betrayal of the original story. But I
interesting.
don't necessarily agree in some ways that I think we'll probably get into.
Yeah, and I mean, we do get a little bit of a downer ending there, but we get into
For sure.
a little bit of that. But anyway, let's get into some puzzle pieces here. What do you have for your first one?
So I probably brought too many, but
Good.
first off, the first thing I thought of is probably an obvious one, was Chicago.
Hmm.
Bill Condon, who wrote and directed Kiss of the Spider Woman, this new remake, wrote the screenplay for Chicago. Rob Marshall wound up directing, but I think both movies. So he also did Dreamgirls in between. Bill Condon wrote and directed that,
Sure.
and Beauty and the Beast, the live action Emma Watson one. And I haven't seen that. I think I will probably avoid that because I like every Bill Condon movie that I've seen, but I have not seen the Twilights and the,
Good plan.
the
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast. So I'll avoid that. But anyway, Chicago. That movie I think does some really interesting things with like staginess, like intentional sort of blurring the lines between what a film musical looks like, what it likes when you see something on Broadway, and then there's this sort of like dreamy third space where it's like we're not sure if these characters are really like singing and dancing in life or whether there's like some sort of movie fantasy thing happening.
Sure.
And in Chicago, it seems like the fantasy space looks kind of like a Broadway stage. So there are some numbers in Kiss of the Spider Woman that I felt were playing with a very similar thing, especially as the movie goes on. It sort of gets more stagey in an interesting way. Like
Right.
the like really stripped back the like red painted club that's like fiery with passion or whatever he says. It looks like a set, either a Broadway set or like a golden age Hollywood set. It's
Yeah.
sort of all of these things are all mixed together, all these different ways of staging a number. And I think so. I've seen the movie twice. I think that there's probably more going on there than I quite picked up on the first time. It's like depending on which level of staginess, like different things are happening psychologically. But
Yeah.
he does say at one point, he says that that they've drenched the set red to something something. That's all the psychology I need, which I really like.
Right. Sure, sure.
Like let me do the work. Like do something drastically different with the set and let me figure out what I think it means emotionally. I think is
Yeah.
a really cool way to approach that kind of thing.
I was wondering if part of the reason it does start to get more and more stagey is because Diego Luna's Valentin is getting more invested in the story. And so, his imagination is kind of, as he's hearing the story unfold, we're kind of seeing his version of it. We don't know if we're actually seeing the movie
Yeah.
itself or whatever. So I think that that's part of that possibly. But I'll just jump right on top of your Chicago there and go with Cabaret as my first puzzle piece here, which I think also
Nice.
speaks to that same idea of like this separation of what is reality and what is just a big stage number for us to enjoy in the movie theater. And, Bill Condon's great, but I mean, if you're going to make a musical, you should be inspired by Bob Fosse, no matter who you are, And
Yeah.
so I think that that's kind of the gold standard there. And the way that all of those musical sequences are separated from the rest of the action is kind of like where I'm going here with the Cabaret puzzle piece. I think it's definitely probably something that was on Bill Condon's mind of how to tell this story and how to kind of separate the story of the movie within the movie that Jennifer Lopez's character is in versus what these other guys in prison are going through and how they're reacting to it. And it's somewhat similar to how everything kind of takes place in Cabaret with the closed off big musical sequences that are kind of separate from everything else going on.
Exactly. I think that's a really good one. And Cabaret also is doing what this is doing, I think, where those musical sequences are separate because they're an escape from, rising fascism in Germany and
Yeah.
in the Weimar Republic, whatever. It's like by removing ourselves literally and physically from the rest of society, we can also, free ourselves from what reality should look like.
Yeah,
We get to make our own kind of thing.
exactly.
I just saw this is sort of a backwards puzzle piece. I don't know, tangentially related, whatever. But a couple of months ago, I saw a restoration of this movie from 1980 called Taxi zum Klo, meaning Taxi to the Toilets, which is a German movie, made sort of like after Stonewall, but before AIDS. So it was like a
Hmm.
period of sort of like a Weimar Republic, like freedom in German queer society. And that movie is there's a lot of back and forth in that too about like drag and performance and they go to a drag ball at one point and you just hear like a snippet of the theme from Cabaret somewhere in the
Hmm.
background. So definitely similar, playing into like we look to this kind of performance of gender, of freedom from all those expected roles. All of those musical influences sort of filter down through time in a
Yeah.
way to inspire the new generation in a
Yeah.
cool way.
Yeah, musicals are kind of like a lineage of just they all kind of run together into this like, just big over the top spectacle of film, which we don't really get elsewhere in film usually. Although,
Yeah.
I'll jump to a puzzle piece where I feel like we do, even though it's not a musical per se, and that is Babylon for my next puzzle piece here.
Ooh.
Which I think just the power of movies and how they can just kind of alter a person's spirit and give somebody meaning and like kind of be there for their entire life's purpose and everything that they go through. And, I think of the Diego Calva character in Babylon, who's kind of the through line through all the craziness that we see unfold with all these actors and filmmaking and all this stuff. His story is what we're basically following through the end, where we get that big magical realism moment in the movie theater and the big release of everything.
Mhm.
And I feel like these characters are kind of getting that same thing from telling and listening to a recap of this Kiss of a Spider Woman movie while they're in jail.
Definitely. And this ends like when he is unfortunately shot on the sidewalk, whatever, he wanders into the movie theater as like an afterlife.
Yeah.
And that whole last big number is I forget what it's called, Go to the Movies or something. So yeah, there's definitely a similar like it's like an earnest belief in the power of movie making.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing can get trite so easily. Like feels like it's made to be included in like an Academy Awards montage about the movies. But
Sure.
it really feels genuine here. Like it really does feel like a, a celebration of the ways that escape can be healing and not just a denial of reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Let's go to another piece. What do you got next?
So next I've got This Is Me Now, which was the J.Lo film that she self-funded and released on Amazon Prime
Uh-huh.
last spring.
Yeah.
um, she plays a character that she just calls the artist. She's unlucky in love throughout that movie. It's all about her succession of boyfriends and how she never feels like she's with the right person. And it's like there's an extra layer where she's telling the story to her therapist, but then it's like music videos inside of music videos
Mm-hmm.
inside of like fantasy worlds. I thought that movie was fascinating, just as like a star text, as somebody trying
Mm-hmm.
to like create their own myth of, you know, nobody really, I think, thought of J Lo that way. Like, sure, she's had a couple husbands, but so does everybody. Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but she's sort of made herself into this, perpetually unlucky in love woman. That was made from a place of finally I found Ben Affleck again, and now we're fine. But now they have since broken up again.
Yeah.
But Ben financed Kiss of the Spider Woman. It was produced by his production company with Matt Damon, so he was like at the premiere the other night, whatever. So I think it's interesting that movie came out on Amazon Prime in, I believe, March, April last year, which is exactly when this movie was being shot. So she must have been thinking about that, I'm sure,
Sure.
of those layers of like performance and star and how they relate to fans and what part of your life you choose to share, with that extra layer of fandom on top of your stardom. And all of that must have still been swirling around her mind, I'm sure.
I think so. I actually had this on my list as well. I love that
Nice.
movie, and I did not get a chance to do an episode on it on this show, and so
So much fun. Like
it's
there's just
wild.
such like an earnest belief in the power of itself to heal and help people.
Yeah, and like it's one of those movies where I completely understand why some people watch it and are like, "This is the stupidest shit I've ever seen,"
For
and
sure.
like, and I get it. I feel like Kiss of a Spider Woman in some ways because we are celebrating J.Lo when it comes to all of those musical sequences. I mean, she's so damn good,
Absolutely.
and whether you like or don't like Kiss of the Spider Woman, I think everyone's in agreement that she's freaking great in this. And I feel like this is a more
Mhm.
reined in version of let's celebrate me for a minute, And
Yep.
but This Is Me Now is awesome, and I think eh, just kind of temper your expectations. Understand you're going into just a crazy person's kind of self portrait, and it's something really special and unique and weird.
I like things like that where you have to make the conscious choice to let yourself be entertained by it. Like it's
Sure.
so easy nowadays to like roll your eyes and laugh at stuff, but you have to choose to be like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to take in whatever she's trying to give me.
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum from talking about musicals and all this stuff and go with the Zack Snyder movie for my next puzzle piece and talk about Sucker Punch, which is
Oh, fun.
an okay movie. But these prisoners basically imagining this more cinematic, over the top, crazy world to kind of take themselves out of the reality that they are stuck in, which is these dark, horrible prisons that are just completely unjust and being in prison for reasons that are just like not worthy of the punishment that they're getting. And
Hmm.
to get out of the mindset of being stuck there, they in that movie make themselves into these giant action heroes with these big Zack Snyder slow-mo action set pieces and all that stuff. And here it's like I said, the opposite end of the spectrum. It's a musical, but they are putting themselves into the story and the way that the movie is cast, and they're playing dual roles, and they're actually in J Lo's movie. And so I think it's a an apt comparison between these two.
I like that. I think that's a very funny one too, because for me, Sucker Punch is so based in like video game storytelling,
Sure.
such as like moving on to the next map with a clear quest, a different world to step into with the next little vignette. And that's kind of funny to suggest that Zack Snyder is such a like straight bro culture, right?
Sure.
So for bros, the escape is video games, and for the gays, it's musicals.
Right. Totally.
It's a fun juxtaposition.
That works so well. What do you
Yep.
got? What do you got for your next piece?
So next, not necessarily a specific film, but more of a star. I was thinking about, so I saw somebody make a comment that they wish that they had cast a better dancer for this movie than J.Lo, which I thought was a strange thing to say because I think she's
Oh
phenomenal.
yeah.
But the person said that when they think of Golden Age Hollywood musicals, they think of Rita Hayworth in, what is it? I think CoverGirl with Gene Kelly. They wish that this musical within the musical had somebody who they said danced with the grace of Rita Hayworth,
Hmm.
which I think completely misses the point of Kiss of the Spider Woman. So this puzzle piece for me is more of like a Carmen Miranda of like a she was in a movie called Weekend in Havana, and had one in Nancy Goes to Rio. There was this whole cycle of Golden Age musicals that we don't really talk about much anymore that were very like all about sort of exoticizing South America.
Hmm.
We had these. She was I forget the exact name. She was like the Brazilian beauty or something.
Right.
So when she danced with the bananas on her head, that became sort of a caricature of how we think of people in Latin America in musicals. And her career only lasted like maybe 15 years because she quickly was only given roles that were just like a parody of her South American Latinness. So for me to say that Rita Hayworth is Latina, but she let herself be totally, whitewashed. Essentially, she
Right.
changed her name. Her roles, CoverGirl, whatever, are not playing into her Latinness whatsoever. And I love the moment in Kiss of the Spider Woman where Molina says, uh, it's just before she dances with the gangster. He says something about like, I love that no matter how much they tried to make her all American, she was always 100% Latin.
Right. Right.
So yeah, this Ingrid Luna in Kiss of the Spider Woman doesn't dance with the grace of Rita Hayworth. She dances with the passion of J.Lo, and that's the point. I think
Sure. Sure.
is that it's a celebration of that identity rather than letting the edges be sanded off by Hollywood.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, this is like whether you like or don't like J.Lo in this case. I mean, she's a freaking superstar. Like she has had
That
this
dance with the gangster where she like squats down and spins around while she's drinking the martini, like incredible.
great stuff.
I
Great
don't know
stuff.
how you can't be moved by that. That's awesome
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really interesting piece there, and definitely the idea that they don't do away with what makes her J Lo. It's like really, it's
Exactly.
really important for if we said it at the beginning of this conversation. We were talking about the other version of the story, and it's like, why make this if you're not going to kind of have a point of view for doing this? And I think that she is a big part of the drive of this movie. Even though it is its
Exactly.
own story as well, but.
And from what I understand, I think the Broadway version starred Cheetah Rivera in that role, which is a sort of a
Okay,
similar thing, like an icon of Latin music, who you go to see
absolutely.
because it's her in that role. Just like we go to this because it's J Lo doing a musical like this.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go with we are talking about a prison drama, even if there's all these musical sequences. So I'm going to go with the Shawshank Redemption for a puzzle piece here. This
Cool.
is a
Speaking of Rita Hayworth.
Yes, exactly. Right. Perfect segue into this. This is prisoners bonding in prison. They bond to a different level in this movie than they do in Shawshank Redemption. But this is all about the camaraderie. It's about the that we see all these trips to the warden and questions of when you're getting released. Like you said, Rita Hayworth. We got the movie star poster on the wall as a major part of everything really when it comes down to
Mhm.
it. I think there's a lot of interesting parallels, which even though they're very different movies and have different ideas on their mind, it is something that I think could be pointed to as ways to describe this movie. Imagine if Shawshank Redemption turned into a big musical at points.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Right on. Well, what do you got next?
Up next, I have Pillow Talk, the Rock Hudson Doris Day romantic comedy. I adore this movie. It's not a musical, but it's a Technicolor romantic comedy.
Hmm.
Rock Hudson and Doris Day play people who I forget if they're like neighbors or like different floors of the same apartment building or something, but they share a party line. And so it's very like 1953 or whatever,
Right, sure.
where they're like arguing over who gets to make the phone call, and she listens in on his calls with women, and he listens in on her talking to men, and all sorts of fun little stuff. But the two of them were in three movies together with Tony Randall, who was sort of their third star, and he I don't think ever publicly came out, but to me is exactly that kind of character, or that like foil that Molina's character is once in Kiss of the Spider Woman. He's like the third. He's like a good friend of Doris Day, who, when he realizes that they're falling in love, he becomes like intensely jealous. And there are moments throughout where you're like, is he more jealous of her or of Rock Hudson? Like,
Hmm.
which one of these two, which part of the love triangle does he wish he was part of?
Yeah.
That movie's so funny, especially looking back, knowing now that Rock Hudson was gay, because at a certain point, Rock Hudson pretends to be gay so that Doris Day isn't interested in him. And so it's like a gay man pretending to be a straight man
Right.
acting in this movie where the straight man pretends to be gay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Really funny movie, and it's gorgeous to look at too. It's got all the like pinks and blues of Technicolor at its best. But Tony Rendell, yeah, that like assistant character who you're like, there's something extra going on here that's not really being said out loud.
That's fun. Yeah, that's really fun
Yep.
stuff. Do you think Diego Luna's character like lives their truth when they get out of prison in this movie? Like where do you think this goes? A story like this?
I would say probably not. I think that he probably goes back to well, I'm blanking on her name, but whatever his lady friend was
Right,
that he
right.
was waiting for, talking about. It's, to me, it seemed like something that was special, that was shared between them in this environment, and it's going to be a memory for him, and
Yeah.
he can now carry that forward into the action that he takes, revolutionary wise.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, it's definitely open-ended, I think, and but I think you're probably right though, especially given the time and especially given the the setting and everything. But
Yeah,
yeah.
there's that interesting tension at one point. I meant to bring this up. I guess now works. I forget where I meant to say this, but there's that one point towards the end, which is why I think that this movie is not betraying the original story, but is doing something interesting and new with it. Where he gets to describing the end of the film, and where I think his name's Kendall sacrifices himself to the Spider Woman,
Right, right.
and Diego Luna says like the lesson that he takes away is, oh wow, this is a movie about learning to sacrifice yourself for the cause of saving a community.
Mhm.
And Molina says, no, silly, he died for love.
Mhm.
And to me, that's the thing. That's the two lessons that people have taken from Kiss of the Spider Woman. The original, from what I understand, was about that like revolutionary sacrifice, and they all die, and it's miserable and it's sad. But you can also choose to read that kind of sacrifice as an expression of love,
Right.
which I think this movie does. And so that love between them in the cell is also sort of a sacrifice in a way. That's Diego Luna's character sort of doing an act of kindness to his friend,
Yeah.
whether he's actually like sexually interested or is now bisexual, who knows? But in that moment, he was doing something for the friend, for the cause of helping his friend.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, when Molina sacrifices himself at the end, you're supposed to ask, like, was he part of the cause, or was he just getting signed up because he was in love with Valentine? I don't know, and does it necessarily matter
Sure.
if the aim was the same, and the government fell 2 months later? Like, maybe that act of love, even if he thought he was doing it for love, maybe that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
That's worth celebrating and lifting up, even if it's not doom and gloom. We must acknowledge reality, revolutionary texts
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
normal.
Absolutely. Well, I got one more piece to bring up here, and that is a Ken Russell movie, Salome's Last Dance, in which
Ooh.
it is a wild ass movie in which Oscar Wilde goes to a whorehouse and is treated to a campy rendition of his play, which has been banned, Salome, and it's being like performed in grand, over the top manner by all the the prostitutes at the whorehouse. And
Hmm.
while this is all happening, Salome, Oscar Wilde is just absolutely having the time of his life, just watching it happen, and gets swept up in it all, and starts to fall in love with the guy who runs the whorehouse, and the whole thing is just so over the top and so wild. And I would say the one negative I have with Kiss of the Spider Woman is I wish for a story that's got so many layers and so much potential camp that it got a little campier. You know, like I wish some of the camp from the movie within the movie bled into the prison drama, which is of course a dark situation, but I feel like we could have squeezed in a little more here and there. And I think of a movie like that where everything is just that's the all the way to one side, and I feel like we could get
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? And that's like the one thing that I wish this movie found a way to like squeeze in a little bit more of that.
That's interesting. We do have the bit where she shows up in like the infirmary, like dancing around the cage
Sure,
of his where he's sick in bed. But you're right. For the most part, it goes the other way, where the drama in the prison affects the story
sure.
inside the musical. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I think that's
Interesting.
just an
Hmm.
area where it could be a little bit more fun, you know what I mean? And more,
Yeah.
you could recommend it to everybody. It's just a great time on top of having some weighty themes and all that kind of stuff. But that's my last puzzle piece. Do you have any more that you want to bring up?
I have several more. I
Okay,
apologize. I overprepared.
let's
But
go for it.
just to run through a couple more, I've got two Cuban movies, or movies about revolutionaries in Cuba, rather. Before Night Falls, the Julian Schnabel movie with Javier Bardem.
I
He
never
was, I
saw
think,
that.
nominated for Best Actor for it.
Yeah.
He's a Cuban activist who sort of moves to the city Havana, I think, at first, and starts exploring his sexuality, and is eventually jailed for. I think they accuse him of abusing children, which is sort of always the trope with gay people. Which I'm glad that this Kiss of the Spider Woman kind of swerved a little bit, where it was just public indecency with a man rather than the usual like public indecency with a man, which is a danger to children.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, Javier Bardem, great. That's about sort of finding your sexuality as the country falls into communism. So there's a similar like self acceptance versus where do I fit in a society that's in major upheaval.
Sure, sure.
There, and then there's another movie just from last year, so it probably wasn't really a puzzle piece, but I just want to recommend because I think it's phenomenal, called Los Frikis, Frikis.
I heard about
And
that.
it's about a
Yeah.
group of Cuban activists in the early 90s, I think, who they intentionally infected themselves with HIV because people who had HIV and AIDS at the time were put on like a commune, essentially, just like taken away from society and all stuck together on this farm. And they sort of create their own little society as an escape from, you know, quote unquote, the horrors of Cuban communism or whatever.
Sure.
So another interesting thing, like being in prison or in denial of reality, of just finding your people and choosing your method of escape, even if most people would be horrified by it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One more I've got is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I love the number in Kiss of the Spider Woman, Gimme Love, where she's dancing around with all the guys in black and singing, Give Me Love. And they're going, Give me kisses, give me love, give me kisses. Really reminded me of in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, there's a Jane Russell number, Ain't There Anyone Here for Love,
Hmm.
where she's dancing around with, it's like a gym and there's a pool and a whole bunch of these like really buff guys who are working out, and she's so horny. She's like, it's full of innuendo, just like this one, desperate for one of these guys to notice her, but they're all more kind of into working out with each other.
Sure,
Very
sure.
like
Yeah.
homo social possible moment. Really fun. So this was kind of like the inverse of that, like where what if the guys were just as horny for J.Lo as she was for them,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was great.
That was my favorite musical
Yeah,
performance of the film, by the way. But yeah,
agreed. I think that and She's a Woman are my top two.
nice.
I think Tonatiuh is so phenomenal in that. Just
Yeah.
heartbreaking in that number. Woof. He's great, and I hope that even though this movie did not even crack $1 million, which is upsetting,
Ugh,
I hope that he still gets some awards attention because what a star. Um,
yeah.
And I guess that's a good segue into my last puzzle piece, which is A Star is Born.
Oh.
Tonatiuh, A Star is Born in this, but that's not why I bring it up. 1954, the Judy Garland version specifically, I think is a fascinating star text. Because Kiss of the Spider Woman for me is a movie all about diva worship, which is such a thing in queer culture of like we pick our divas. There's this meme that goes around all the time, like when you're born as a gay person, God assigns you one female pop star that you have to love for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of those divas throughout history, Judy Garland is like the prime example. We sort of latch onto because in some ways it seems like they represent our struggle in a way. And I think Molina definitely feels that about Ingrid Luna, and especially Aurora in this movie. He really relates to her like unlucky in love situation of all these men. She's not sure who's right. She just sort of has to brush past them because they're not the one. Just like he feels like he can't get the attention of the guys that he is interested in.
Mm.
But so A Star is Born, Judy Garland, I think, is the prime example of like the type of diva that queer people flock to. It's usually something, it's usually a person, a woman who has dealt with some sort of adversity that we feel kind of reflects, our own struggle to find acceptances in society. So Judy Garland had a huge queer fan base up, from The Wizard of Oz, even before maybe.
Yeah.
Over the Rainbow, obviously, a huge song, clear queer meaning there, not just rainbow, but just the idea of like wanting to find a more colorful place where people are gonna accept you and want you as part of the group. So Judy Garland, as her career went on, um, she really struggled with addiction and depression. They were feeding her like pep pills to keep her awake for 19 hours on set when she was a child, and
No.
she just never really had a chance. And it's very sad, but she had certain moments throughout her career that were like triumphs, like her Carnegie Hall performance. I think that was in the early 60s maybe, but 1954, she had a comeback in A Star is Born, which sort of depended on you knowing like this is Judy Garland's comeback as a new star to the scene who's still learning how to be famous. So
Mm.
it's that star text inversion that I think is really fun. But similar, like that movie, to watch that movie is not just to see Judy Garland being great. Like queer people watch that movie and see somebody who was able to rise above all of the like difficult on set rumors, or her she people called her ugly at that point in her career because it was clear on her face that she had addiction issues. And so to see her be so triumphant in that movie is like a little bit extra special to queer people in some way. So I really like this movie, Kiss of the Spider Woman, because they seem to really get it, the way that like queer people can. He says about Kendall at one point, like he lives for her and through her. Like queer people worshiping a diva is not just like, it's not subservience. It's like a recognition of a shared struggle in some way.
Right.
And I think, yeah, this movie gets it
Does J.Lo have a
brilliantly, I
big
think.
queer following?
Not necessarily, which I think makes her an interesting person
Yeah.
for this one. She does have the rising above struggle narrative right now,
Sure.
though, because
Sure.
of that This Is Me Now flopped horribly. She rebranded her tour as a greatest hits tour and then canceled it entirely. Then got divorced from Ben. So there's definitely a lot of like constant career reinvention, constantly having to like see where she is in the public eye and kind of make adjustments. So she doesn't necessarily. I think gay people love Hustlers. I think we love her in that. But
Everyone
and
loves
Selena, of
Hustlers.
course, right? Made in Manhattan is a big one, but yeah, there's not necessarily as much of a latching on to her. But I do sort of feel a similar way in. I mean, obviously she's no Judy Garland, but watching this, it is nice to see her shine like she can. She People make fun of how much she like shows the work. She clearly wants to be famous. She's good at being a famous person.
Yeah.
She's great at dancing, but it's definitely like you see that she's the type of person who rehearses day in and day out to get to that level. Like she doesn't have the greatest voice necessarily, but she keeps going, and there's like a shared like a I get it in some way, on
Sure.
some
Sure.
small weird level. I have a lot of affection for her, even if I don't think she's the best of her generation at any one given thing. She has entertained me plenty over the years, so so I'm happy that she's out there still still doing it.
Yeah.
And this one I think is a a jewel on the crown or a feather in the cap or whatever you want to say. This is a great showing for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up Kiss of the Spider Woman. Eric, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Sure. The other night I saw Urchin, which is directed by Harris Dickinson.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
He I am really into this whole like rising group of like young British guys out there right now, like Paul Mescal and Harris Dickinson, Josh O'Connor especially. But I think Harris Dickinson is the first of that like new generation to try writing and directing, and I think this movie is phenomenal. It's about well, the title is like Charles Dickensian slang for like a homeless person.
Hmm.
So it's about a guy who lives on the streets in London. There's a violent incident at the beginning and he gets taken to jail. So then the movie is about him like getting out of jail then and getting a second chance at life. Basically, like social services sets him up with a hostel room and he finds his way into like a kitchen job. And so he, for the first time in many years, people are willing to give him another shot. So it's sort of about like, is he going to be able to resist the pull back to his addictions? And poverty is a cycle and all that stuff. But the lead performance that Harris Dickinson got out of Frank Delane is just extraordinary, I think. So the fact that Harris Dickinson is not only, I think, a great actor, but a great director of actors is really exciting. And Urchin is worth checking out because I think it's going to be seen as like the debut film of somebody who might be a really great voice in a couple of years.
Right on. Yeah, looking forward to checking it out for sure. Eric, where can people find you and your work and everything you're up to?
I am online, Instagram, Blue Sky at Eric Anders, and I have a Medium publication called Everything's Interesting, so you can find my stuff on Rotten Tomatoes.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing the show again and look forward to chatting with you again sometime soon.
Alrighty, anytime. See ya.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Kiss of the Spider Woman. Thank you to Eric Langberg for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed. We've got a lot of episodes on the way, including one that I recorded with Eric like 2 months ago for a film called Oh Hi, that I'm just waiting for a good like streaming release date or VOD or something that line up an episode with. But constantly recording all these live shows and other episodes, it's tough sometimes to get these episodes out on time. But Oh Hi on the way, along with a bunch of other episodes. So make sure you are subscribed. You could also follow us on social media at PiecingPod and always check piecingpod.com for info about my upcoming live shows. You could also sign up for the mailing list while you're there, and that way you'll always know what I've got coming up as far as these shows are concerned. But that is a good place to wrap up today and close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And I mean, I've got plenty of big dramatic music to play, but I am currently in the finishing touches phase for the sixth album by the Pup Pups, my comedy rock group with my pets. And anyone who has, followed along with me over the years knows that the lead singer of the Pup Pups, Harvey, my dog, passed away this year. So this will be the end of an era as far as songs with Harvey. I think there's 12 songs that we finished, and that'll be the end of the Harvey songs probably. I mean, who knows? We'll see if I'll decide to somehow find a way to bring them back, but that's another story. But it's not all Harvey. The last album was all Harvey. It was a big Harvey solo album, but the first four albums were a big group project, including his cat sisters. And I have a song on the new album from Harvey's sister Trudy that I feel like it fits well with this movie somehow. Maybe that's just in my head and I'm losing my mind here. But I'm going to go with Trudy's new song from the upcoming new The Pup Pups album called Pup Pup Radio. And the song is called I Got My Eye on You. So I hope you enjoy I Got My Eye on You, and stay tuned for news on the pre-order of the new Pup Pups album and how to get your pet included on the bonus song. It's coming out very soon. But hope you enjoy this song, and we will be back with more piecing it together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.